Taco to go through this Valance versus Obey matchup with straight into picks and bans. Obey, first pick, and they're going to ban Cabrakan.
Very standard pick coming out. A lot of these PZ teams have been favoring the Cabrakan pick, especially considering how much pressure he provides early on with the early Tremors and the Vanguard. Just not exactly the tanky opposition you want to try to be facing up against so early on.
Honbat's banned out by Obey Alliance as well. Over 80% win ratio on that Honbat when he is managed to get through picks and ban, well, for the ban stage anyway. Toth and Amaterasu to run things off for Valance squad, and immediately Obey are going to lock in Terra. Now, Terra, her level 1 isn't the greatest in the game at all in the support role, Taco. Do we expect to see that actually go into the support role?
I wouldn't be surprised to see that opt for the solo lane pick. It's certainly more of Maniac's play style when you consider that he's been favoring these Guardians already in the solo lane matchups. And considering that she already has the global presence as well, that also makes for a strong opposition in that solo lane matchup.
And you called it right, because Fafnir has now been locked in for Obey. More than likely not go into the solo lane with Fafnir, even though he's not too bad there. Scotty for Valance squad again, though. We're going to see Funballer go back to that one. He likes this quite a lot just lately, Taco.
Well, one interesting aspect of the Scotty in comparison to other hunters is she does have technically 2 abilities to start off with the lane clearing early. When you combine that with the Khepri or even... It's so much lane clear and farming potential early on from the dual lane pressuring side. I wouldn't be surprised to see Valance opt for some early jungle invades on the side of the red buffs for Obey, which could be incredibly problematic, but the Zeus and Fafnir should be a strong deterrence factor at the same time.
Well, it's double Guardian versus double Guardian, but Valance squad here have gone for double Hunter to go with that as well, where Obey only picked up Zeus, now Rama to join that as well. So it's going to be a very tanky sort of composition from both sides here.
Ram does have a slight advantage, though, considering that he is more of the hyper carry sense, and he is an excellent hunter for dealing with Scotty and her Kaldar, because the astral arrows actually count as 2 shots onto the dog's health. Yeah, so it's perfect for combating into the Scotty, especially when getting away from the ultimate. You can also just ult immediately up into the sky as a Ram. But at the same time, this could potentially be a Scotty mid and a Medusa in the hunter role.
Yeah.
It's unlikely, but there is a slight possibility for it.
Well, on top of that, Jingten now been drafted by Valance as well, so 3 Guardians for them there. Jingten, more than likely the one we'll see in the solo lane here. Ymir in the jungle. He's pretty strong from the jungle for all intended purposes.
And you're just going to have the classic support via, or Guardian via Guardian matchup in the solo lane. And indeed, it is Zalia on that Jingten facing up against Maniac on the Terra. So Obey with the slight sustain composition, primarily just because of the Terra pick, but I really like both of these drafts.
And why is it you like both these drafts? What is it that they're going to bring to the table that's different than what you may have expected?
Well, on the side of Obey, you have so much AoE map presence and control, but to compensate for that, Valance, you can never really go wrong with 3 Guardians and 2 ADCs. I mean, there's just so much damage that you could potentially output, and when you have such a strong frontline and peeling potential, that's really what you're looking for inside of these dual hunter compositions.
Well, 4.4 patch has already dropped as well, as you can see, so now we're going to be having that in this game as time goes on. So a couple of changes did come through, things like Bancross got a bit of a buff, Fatalis had a couple of changes with attack speed on it, and cost increase as well for Flicker and Ritual, so keep an eye on that as time goes on. And Milsey takes a large chunk of damage at the start there with Funball and Big Man Tings combining with a little bit of Caldeir's help there to get that pressure, and now they're going to look for the cheeky invader, the purple.
Wouldn't be surprised to see them just take the babies, and then they're actually clearing. This is really smart of Pretty Prime to opt to take the smalls from his red buff in case Funballer and Big Man Tings were looking for the potential level 2 off of it. Now that Pretty Prime has rotated in and taken that option away from them, they're forced to go back into the wave. And Emil's and Ataraxia, also a smart play because they've already lost the lane pressure. You might as well secure your buff, not worry about the enemy dual lane taking that away from you and having the timer of it.
Well, not only that, with Obey as well, Valance, you saw what Lobster did there in the mid lane. He went to his red buff and soloed that himself as well. So both mid laners changing things up now as people start to understand the meta a little bit more, Taco. They're trying to find new inventive ways of starting off in the jungle, and then players clear mid lane and then do your red buff, or at least the babies, is the minimum thing you need to do.
Lobster has a little bit more flexibility than what Pretty Prime would have because he opted for the Bumbas with the Bluestone Pendant, and because of this, as an ADC, you can certainly clear your red buff by yourself, which that was obviously what what Lobster was looking for, but Pretty Prime, on the other hand, was going to have to wait for his team to help him out to ensure that they're not going to risk any sort of invade coming out on the side of Valance.
Well, right now, Valance in a bit of a lead for the moment in terms of gold right now, but the experience share from Obey are going to come back into play in a second to even things up now that the red is dropped, as well as those back harpies too. So just a small experience lead for Valance for the time being, with all the mid camps being down now. It's generally farming the waves here and looking for a team that maybe pushed up a little bit too far.
For Obey, they need to play this early game so carefully, just because of the fact that this Scotty and Kepri duo lane, that you can tell just so much pressure. And Big Man and Funballer, they're not players who are foreign to aggression. They certainly want to try and engage in this kind of circumstance, because the more pressure they put into this duo lane, the easier it will be overall for Cherio to try and make an early rotation into that mid lane and put Pretty Prime under a lot of fire.
Now that 2v2 in the duo lane we keep talking about here, does that change at level 5 in any way? Does Obey get stronger at level 5 to fight that Valance in this lane?
Obey get mildly stronger just because Fafnir will have his ultimate available, and Fafnir ultimate is definitely a strong ultimate to have alongside of a Rom. But you have to consider that Rom is more of the hyper carry, and especially against a early to mid game hunter like Scotty, Ataraxia has to play a little bit more passive if he doesn't want to find himself falling super far behind to Funballer, because one wrong engagement onto Scotty, while it's a great matchup overall for the hunter because of the astral arrows, at the same time, he could definitely find himself falling early, and if that happens and the Scotty is permitted to snowball, Funballer could definitely be a threat in this game.
And we've seen him be a threat with that Scotty before Funball, so we'll see if we can do the same thing here against Obey. Both these teams have not lost a complete set so far this year. They've both split once, but other than that, they've been on winning track so far, still up towards the top of the table, looking to be one of the top 2 teams to guarantee themselves a spot at Masters.
Obey are certainly thirsty for it as well, considering that, I mean, they haven't had as many games played as Valance has.
That's
and
correct.
So this is really their chance to shine, and if they come forward in this set, they will definitely be looking very strong for the land.
Funballer versus Emilzy over on this left-hand side for the time being. Emilzy forced to ultimate there, trying to get extra damage off on Funballer. Gotta respect the amount of damage a Fafnir can do! And there you have it, Fafnir cleanup crew. Funballer dead already. And as Scotty, with not much mobility in terms of escape taco, it's easy to get picked up sometimes.
No escape and an entire creep wave at that. Emilzy utilized the creep wave that was a very smart and aggressive play by Emilzy to just stand on top of that creep wave, because in Fafnir's ultimate, I mean, you're just so tanky, but you're dealing so much damage, and it's really difficult for such an immobile hunter like you were mentioning to try and manage and escape from that.
And it's also good to see supports that realize they can 1v1 these hunters in the early game. When you've got a god like Fafnir, who's level 5, is very strong, it can come into play, allow you to get a small lead, and that gold is not necessarily something you want on the support in terms of the first blood, but it can help him to get his build online a little bit quicker, which helps your team out.
The best part about that engage is that he could have potentially been the reason why we see Funballer building into these T2 boots right now, rather than trying to just stay farming out for the full transcendence early on.
Maniac's in trouble because Cherio's making the rotation, and Maniac's a couple of hits from Def here, trying to use the minions to help him out, but he's running the wrong way, and the worst thing is he's running towards Papa Lob, and he'll get that kill. Meanwhile, Twig was trying to support Maniac there, but it's not going to be good enough to slow that down, and Valance managed to answer back to the first kill of the game.
I'm not accustomed to watching Papa Lob picking up the kill rather than being the one sacrificed for it.
Yeah, it's unusual to see that, but that's kind of been the stylistic changes Valance have had to make here, because when you look at these two teams, Sacco, 3 members of each have pretty much been a core together for a while now. You've got Obey, who added Maniac and Emilzy this year, so their core has been Captain Twig, Prime, and Ataraxia, and then Valance. You've got Zalia, Lobster, and Funballer. So it's almost core versus core in this matchup.
And it's not even just the core versus core, but it's also the veteran squad versus the veteran squad. Both of these teams have so much of experience on their sides. Captain Twig potentially in a decent amount of trouble here.
He's going to get pulled into a danger spot now. Cherio's going to pop the ult, but Lobster will get credit for the kill again. And Milsey couldn't do enough with his ultimate there just to dissuade Valance from going on there. So Valance pick up a second kill onto Lobster again, who already has his Warrior Tabby online. Ataraxia and Funballer both looking at making a rotation to that fight, but Funballer getting the better of the argument.
That's just kind of what you expect to see from a Scotty early on when she drops the ice in those narrow alleyways. It's incredibly difficult to try and play around it. And Lobster, however, is looking mighty nice right now on this level 9 Medusa. 2 kills up, plenty of gold to his name, and opting to build immediately into that Transcendence, which I think will be a very smart power spike for him.
After boots as well, I mean, this is just him playing to the advantage he's got with these 2 kills. Now, getting this Transcendence online will give him the power spike. When we talk about Medusa's late game, she's okay, but she's not a hyper carry in the late game. We don't class her as that, but mid game, definitely dominant.
Certainly not a hyper carry, but she's someone who can still deal a ton of damage and really prevent that late game aspect to come into play. Because if you have a Medusa online early and she's controlling these team fight areas, especially with that ultimate, I mean, Obey are really going to have to be super cautious throughout the entire jungle. Otherwise, Lobster could very easily come around the backside like we've seen happen so many times before, and one Medusa ultimate could really be a huge swinging factor in a game.
I'm talking about both these teams as well. These compositions, Sacco, they both sort of smell to me like the mid to late game comps. With this many Guardians on your team, you want the front line to be tanky enough to be able to absorb the damage, and then your back line to be able to shred through the tanks they're going to have to deal with too.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Cherio, considering that he already has 2 Guardians on his team for the peeling and CC. It'd be very reasonable for Cherio to build a little bit more damage oriented, because a lot of times teams can underestimate the Amir damage that's really coming out on his 2. And on top of that, just we've seen Cherio with his walls before, and I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if that was also another aspect that Valance are looking to just try and lock down Obey into any sort of tight entryway to just really synergize between Lobster and Cherio with their ultimates.
And Valance's Guardians cover 3 different options as well. You've got the Ymir that's the initial engage for you there, looking for the walls of the freezes to set you up. Then you've got the Jing 10 on Zalia, and he'll turn up to these fights and be looking to disrupt the backline and maybe force some beads with that ultimate of Rage and Steel. And then finally, on the very back line is Big Man Tings. He's going to sit with his carries and make sure they're looked after during these fights. They've got a nice composition with the Guardians there to balance it out. But Valance, even though Obey got that Gold Fury Oracles there, they still got to pull the gold, drop it down to half. But with the response from Obey here, they'll be happy that we just saw Ataraxia use that ultimate. Now Twigs uses his too. Freeze doesn't find a home as Twig gets walled off and getting escaped. And Funballer picks it up with the kit with the ultimate.
That is the primary issue that you have with the Ratataskor into this composition as well, which was something I was actually just about to mention, is it is so difficult for Rat to try and engage at any point in time for Obey. He has to play it super safe.
A little bit of trouble there. He's forced to ult Prime on the way around, but Zelia's going to force the beads early. Prime turns up, tries to look for an ultimate opportunity if he can to get some good damage off, but most of Valance are out of the way. Zelia gets tickled a little bit, but he'll just leap back to the safety of his team. And once again, Valance come out ahead by just getting more ultimates for nothing.
I don't blame Obey in the slightest for opting to ult defensively. That was a smart ultimate Pretty Prime. It really deterred Valance from chasing for the engage there, because otherwise I think we could have potentially seen a Mealsy go down there if that Zeus ultimate hadn't been dropped to really stop everybody from entering that area. But with all those ultimates being down on the side of Obey, this leaves a very good opportunity for Valance to try and pressure out the Gold Fury early on.
And they've been trying to do that a couple of times now. Obviously, the ward coverage from the Oracle was there a moment ago, so Obey knew what was going on. Now they have to keep an eye on making sure they get wards down there for now, because Valance have sniffed there a couple of times now in a row. And I don't think they'll be too scared about going back to it once more.
And Valance have a very strong composition for shredding that Gold Fury early on. I mean, when they left it last time, we saw it was already at 50% health. So if they were to choose to commit to this, they could certainly secure it. Right,
Harpies have half 3 spawned. Obey going to get those on the right with Captain Twig. Just going to soak those ones up. Left one's going to go the way of Valance as well. Cherio's going to meet Captain Twig in the jungle there for the time being. Now have a little bit of a scuffle for the moment. The Oracle's about to spawn again. And it's important to go for these Oracles, Taco, just for the ward coverage, not necessarily just the golden experience as well.
I mean, the golden experience is nice, of course, but it's predominantly for map vision why you see so many teams emphasizing a lot of pressure into the Oracle area, and Ataraxia with the cheeky steal to both of those.
Yeah, Funballer just didn't confirm one of the two. When you get there, what are you trying to do as the Hunter trying to do those? Are you just trying to get one over the other for guaranteed safety, or are you really, obviously you want both, but is it better to go for one than both?
It's better to just lock down one, because if you lock down one, at least you're guaranteed that the enemy won't get the secured vision onto the Gold Fury, but that's one of the downsides of the Scotty. Funballer opted to use abilities just a little bit too soon, and Ataraxia just had to be patient. And I mean, if there's one thing that we've seen Ataraxia display himself being great at, it's patience.
And talking about patience, both these teams are European. They're used to patient games, and with the comps they've put together, I'm expecting this one could go a little while longer before we start to see massive amounts of action in it.
Most of these team fight pop-offs won't really begin happening until I'd say around the level 13 through 15 time period, because at that point in time, it's when both sides have a chance to establish their tanky compositions that they have going for them. But on top of that, it'll just be a more interesting aspect to see how the Hunters are going to face off against each other, because Medusa and Scotty are going to be pretty much online around that point in time, especially with the builds that they've both opted to go. Both these Hunters trying to finish off the Fatalises, and they both already have Transcendence online. I wouldn't be surprised to see Lobster opt for the Fatalis build as well. Even with the price increase, it's still an excellent item for Transcendence build to pick up.
I'm talking about that Transcendence with that power spike now coming online for Lobster in the mid lane. It could be an opportunity for Valance to go and look towards the Gold Fury again. Bad news is there is a wave moving on the duo side as we look at the solo side. Now Maniac's in a bit of trouble here, forced to ult defensively. The heal comes through at the right opportune moment, but oh, the damage from Xaylia with the leap there. If he would have found that, I think Maniac would have fallen. Instead, he will survive for now as Valance tried to make something happen in the mid lane. Very lucky escape there overall.
Very lucky escape by Maniac, and not to mention he had to expend that Terra ultimate just to try and survive for himself. Valance are going to know that that ultimate is down and immediately just trying to pressure out again onto this Gold Fury.
Well, Emilzy hammer times Cherry out to the face to stop the freeze. The second freeze is a different story. Now Emilzy bursting so hard, he can't get away. Twigs in the sky, they're going to hit onto 3, allow the damage from Prime to do its work. But look at how healthy they all are with those meditates coming into play. Valance straight back to the Gold Fury, already at half health. Twig on the front line, Prime trying to get in there as well to stop the Gold Fury being done. And Maniac's watching. Ataraxia in the sky, tries to snipe, forcing the reset for now as Cherio invests into Captain Twig a little bit more there. And now it's Maniac on the front line now trying to juke his way back to safety. He eats a lot of poke for that too, but Valance win this battle here, Taco.
Valance are going to go back to trying to pressure out the Gold Fury once again. The side of Obey is so low, they all need to back. Ataraxia really needs to be careful. They're trying to sustain in the back line with the Terra, but it might not be enough. And Ataraxia, it's so low after the Cherio's Reese, but the Kepri ultimate.
Kepri ultimate comes into play, and Cherio's like, ha, I'm out. And the detonate was just half a second too early from Prime there. Otherwise, they may have been able to pick up Cherio in trade for the Gold Fury. The Valance squadron just got there. 2,000 gold lead. 3,500 experience now. Favor of Valance.
What a great ultimate by Big Man Tinks. Recognizing immediately that Cherio's entire positioning right there was just purely to get in the way of Obey, really prevent them from trying to come back in for the steal. And
but look at that call tackle. I really like that decision. Obey realizing that Valance were all going to back after getting the Gold Fury, went straight to the Portal Demon to try and answer back some of the golden experience loss they suffered at the Gold Fury. It's not as much though, but it does give them a little bit of a bonus with that portal now for a few seconds.
That play isn't so much for the golden experience though, as much as it is they just don't want Valance having that option to secure the Portal Demon, because once a team starts snowballing, especially a double Hunter composition, and they take the Portal Demon, you never really know when Valance are going to try and just group up and siege into that mid lane, and having the Portal Demon on their side would have been a definite threat to Obey. So very smart call by them to just take that option away from Valance and just try and once again control the pacing of the game. They want to slow things down before it starts to get a little bit too out of control.
We'll keep an eye on the support builds here from Emilzy and Big Man Tings. Obviously, Hot Ward Amulet picked up first of all for the Kepri, and that's basically to deal with the magical damage coming out from the Zeus and Terra, and Fafnir, who he's going to see a little bit more often than maybe the Ratatoska and the Rama at the start of the game, but then working towards what more than likely will be Gauntlet of Thebes for both of these two. We see this going forward a lot more, but Shield of Regrowth is one that can pop its head into support builds now and again if they've got sustain in the kit, like that of Fafnir. Right hand side, Xaylia pressuring Maniac again and forcing once again the ultimate.
Maniac has been having a really rough time in this solo lane facing off against Xaylia, and it's not necessarily something you would expect because sure, Terra doesn't have the greatest early game point of time when it comes to a laning phase, but for him to be getting the better end of this for so long by himself and putting this issue for Obey is that Captain Twig has been trying to hang around in this solo lane. It's not the first time we've seen him rotate over to try and potentially peel Maniac out of trouble, but as a Reddit tasker, that's really not what you want to be looking for.
Well, you don't want to look at this if you're a Millsy right now. Great ultimate from him, though, to stop the pull-in for big man Tings. It's Tings who's in a lot more trouble himself. Forced to ult away defensively, still standing tall, though, as now Captain Twig goes to the sky. Valance, however, did manage to get what they wanted, which was the tier 1 tower. Obey, unable to answer back.
And just like that, Captain Twig's ultimate is going to be completely expended. You could tell he wanted to chase Big Man there, but just too much mobility with the Kefri ultimate, giving him the extra little boost of movement speed. He was just able to escape, and that's kind of incredibly unfortunate because Obey expended again so many of their ultimates, and with all of these ultimates being down, I wouldn't be surprised to see Valance opt to group up and not only potentially pressure out the mid lane again, but just any lane. If they're all together, it will be incredibly difficult for Obey to try and fight back into this.
Is it better now for Valance to really group up and just look for all the tier 1 towers? Because Gold Fury's down for a while here, Taco. They could go to the tier 1 tower left and not really lose anything that they've not already succeeded at getting themselves in the first place ahead of the enemy team.
Considering that their composition really strives at this point in the game as well, that would probably be a smart grouping and team decision to go ahead and pull through, because when you have 2 hunters online and they're already starting to flourish in a game this early on, I mean, I'd say early, even though we're approaching the 20-minute mark, but it is still like fairly early considering that these are 2 compositions you don't typically get to see much display from until around the 25-minute mark in most games. But Valance are certainly getting the better hand and the upper hand in a lot of these team fighting scenarios. It's just been incredibly difficult for Captain Twig to really make anything happen on this Reddit task or like what he has in mind. He's opting for such a heavy-oriented pen build, but it's just so much CC on the side of Valance when you have to constantly be worrying about Amir freezes or even the Shingten ultimate when your purification is burned out. Then you have Lobster as Medusa and a Scotty with her ice, which is always super annoying. It's just, it becomes really problematic. To
try and get in there and just do what you want to do, get out again as well. So most of the time, if you do see Twig go in, I'm expecting to see him maybe trade kills, is what he's really looking to do, I guess, in this jungle position. You'd like, in the perfect world, you want your jungler to go in, get the kill, and get out. But now, I'm pretty sure we're going to see him go in, maybe get a kill, but, well, hopefully get a kill and trade himself for it. Could be a good scenario for Obey.
The issue with trading for Obey is that their composition relies more on the 5v5 than what it would in the 4v5, because there's a lot of pressure on the back of Pretty Prime. If his Zeus ultimate isn't on point, then they have to rely even more onto the ROM damage from Ataraxia, and facing off into 3 Guardians even as a hyper carry ROM, that is still incredibly problematic when you are constantly having to worry about double ADC damage, and 2 ADCs is going to do a lot more than just 1 hyper carry.
Well, Gold Fury has respawned again, and already Valance dancing around the area with Prime now rotating to the left-hand side here, looking for a bit of pressure onto Fumble. Can't get the chain lightning onto him through the Aegis shield there as well. Instead, focus onto Emilzy once again, bursted pretty heavily by Cherio, Big Man Tings, and Lobster. But Emilzy's going to be able to heal himself back up for now, as now Zalia rotates into Ataraxia, committing to Big Man Tings a little bit heavier there, forcing the shell. As on the left-hand side, it's Fumballer, who's already been dropped to below half health. After the detonate comes through, Twig can't find the ultimate, though. If he could have found that, could have been a different story. Now Twig throws in place, horse to beads defensively. Petrify from Lobster was pretty good as Zalia throws him into a big old ultimate from Ymir, but the shell comes into play for Obey. Obey fall back for the moment. Now both teams in a similar sort of position right now, all grouped around the Gold Fury, looking to continue this engagement.
Both sides burning out 3 ultimates, but it looks like Maniac could be in a bit of trouble if he's not careful.
He is tanky enough, though, just to weather the storm with the breastplate of Valance and the Void Stone too. Still trying to utilize Emilzy's ultimate there in that Fafnir to get a little bit of bonus damage off. But now Valance are back. All 5 strong. Fumballer, remember, was on 5% health pretty much a few moments ago. And now he's back with full health. His ultimate available, as is Big Man Tings.
Valance could... I don't think they want to try and take up the fight here after that last trade. I mean, they had to expend the 3 of their ultimates, which are pretty heavy engaging ultimates, and that was an excellent CC chain as well on the side of Valance. Lobster getting off the Petrify and landing it onto Emilzy, but again, at the same time, you also had Obey, who had the perfect counterplay to that situation between the Meditation and the Terra ultimate, coming through to really save the life of Emilzy and peel his team out of any sort of difficult, because once you start chasing towards that T2 tower line area, that's where you start to play a little bit dangerously with things, because I really like the disengage from Obey, not because of the fact that, sure, we recognize that ultimates have been burned and let's just back off, but overstaying has been the downfall of a lot of teams at this stage in the game. And so for Obey to just play it safe here and back off, I will always prefer, I think, that kind of decision-making from a team.
But that team fight, when you look at it, nobody died there, but pretty much every relic was used from both teams, shells, meditations, and it just shows what you can do with these compositions when you've got more Guardians on the board, you know, more of these tanky frontline that can keep you available. And as time goes on, teams work out how Season 4 is played. This is what the Spring Split is generally about, though, is discovering how the Season 4 meta is going to begin at the start of the year.
And the interesting part as well for all of this is when you look at all of the Hunter builds that are on the board right now, no one's opting for lifesteal. They're just opting for damage, and it looks like Valance could potentially be opting for a Portal Demon, as Big Man Tings and Lobster are looking to have a little bit of engage onto that.
Well, Twig was actually trying to rotate on Xaylia instead there, but Zalia's quite happy, as is the Portal Demon for Valance right now. Very low, but in he comes looking to secure it, not going to find it. Valance get hold of the Portal Demon. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel used by Xaylia. It only throws Maniac away, not a big doom and gloom there. Tings forced to ult himself there into an awkward spot. He is going to revive, but he's still pinned in an awkward place once more. Maniac continuing chase there. Twig on the right-hand side, zoning away Cherio and Xaylia as the snipes from Ataraxia rain down and will claim the life of Big Man Tings. Next on the list is Funballer, juking in and around the ice field that Scardy provides is not enough to stop Pretty Prime, making the heavens rave. And now they're positioned around this Fire Giant.
This should be a Fire Giant for the way of Obey. There's not a whole lot that Cherio can do as a solo Amir. Even with the backup of his team, it's really difficult for them to get in.
Triple freeze from Cherio, and he's going to get a good ultimate off too, but it's not enough damage to stop them. Lobster takes more poke than he would like on the backline, and now Twig turns up, forcing the Aegis onto Lobster too. Ataraxia with the rollout will give chase and pick up Lobster as well. Obey are now back and actually in control of this game here, Taco.
That was an excellently played team fight by the side of Obey. The Zeus ultimate, especially from Pretty Prime, locking down and really splitting up the entirety of Valance. That's a team where, sure, their composition is great when you get it online, but at the same time, you have to be grouped for it to prosper. And for Pretty Prime to split everybody up, Funballer was by himself in one direction towards the front end of Obey, so he was able to fall pretty easily. And then on top of that, you also had Big Man Teens who got locked into that Zeus ult as well. So he was taking tons of poke, even through the shell, even through the Khepri ultimate, just not enough sustain on the side of Valance to try and compensate for the damage that was coming through for Obey.
So would you say it was Pretty Prime's ultimate that was the real game changer around that Portal Demon there? Because we saw the Portal Demon go the way of Valance, and then the fight unfolded. Was it all really down to what Prime did with his ultimates there?
Zeus ultimates at this point in the game are a huge determining factor for the swing of how fights are going to go, and I think that up until that point in time, that was probably Valance's fight, but as soon as that Zeus ultimate came through and was able to disorient the side of Valance so strong, it just becomes incredibly easy for Obey to secure the picks, which is more of what their composition is meant for dealing with. I mean, that's why you have a Ratataskor.
Yep.
You want to try and chase down these immobile hunters like the Scotty or chase down the Khepri, and that's exactly what Twig did. And the positioning just all around from Obey there, and that fight was great.
Well, that's Rex's position there. Caught him out a little bit, forced to beads there up against Cherio and those walls that got dropped behind him. Obey do have the Fire Giant on all 5 members of their team now, so extra regeneration as well as that of Terror. And with a Fafnir too, they're going to be able to start shredding down some of these tier 1s. They've taken the left, and now they're heading to the middle.
Tons of tier 1s still, I mean, not anymore, but they still have 1 remaining in the solo lane side. But at this point in the game, you might as well just pressure for these T2s, try and secure as many objectives as possible, because once Obey starts opening up this map, that just makes it all the easier for this pick composition to find that backline that they want to and just get inside. Because the sooner that they pick up 1 member of Valance, the faster that these team fights are going to fall more in favor of Obey.
Well, that's little split coming out from there from Captain Twig. He takes the tier 1 towers on his last legs anyway, and now he draws Zalia over to come and defend the tier 2, which now opens up an opportunity for him to go to the sky. Into the tier 2 tower he goes, straight onto Lobster, forcing Big Man Tings to deal with him. Twig in an awkward spot there, Aegis is very early, as meanwhile Obey focusing the tier 2 tower, having to deal with Zalia, who was in the front. The shell is dropped by Valance. They still want to engage this one. The bad news is Obey saw that shell get dropped. They back away, but they get what they came for, which was the tier 2 tower.
They've burned the Terra ultimate there as well as a meditation, but the entirety of Obey is full health, and still with 2 ultimates on the table, one being Fafnir and the other being Ataraxia. This is a very uncomfortable spot for Valance to be in.
Fight 2, big Petrify. Ataraxia's already dead. Fumble credited with a kill, but that was a lot of work from Lobster. And Millsy trapped in place for a second, but will leap away back to safety. Obey have to turn tail and run here from Valance after that kill.
And just like that, Caster's Curse pretty much strikes again.
Yep.
Ataraxia seemed as though he was going to be in a comfortable position.
Ooh,
Beat's still
Zalia
down.
with a great teleport there to the front lines to try and continue this chase onto Obey. In the jungle, Pretty Prime's in a bit of an awkward spot up against Cherio there. Eats a bit of damage, but now it's Cherio that could get turned on here. 3 members surround him now. The rest of Valance were focusing on the tier 1 tower. They have to pull off that tier 1 for a second and then go back to it. Once Cherio realizes he's back in a safe position. 5-4 tier 1 on the right falls. This is still anyone's game, Taco.
No, and like I mentioned earlier, the 5-man composition from Valance, that's what they need. They were grouped up through both of those potential sieges from Obey, and as soon as they found a 1-pick from Obey, it just, especially onto the ROM of all characters, Ataraxia is like the last person Obey wants to see going down right now because he is so much of their damage at the moment.
Well, that radar ultimate is just going to give vision of the whole of Valance, who was setting up for that portal demon there. Valance knew it themselves, so they will back away as well. Fire Giant due to spawn in the next 55 seconds, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the next point of contention.
Oh, certainly. Fire Giant dances. This is the primary point in the game that you really start to see both of these teams trying to ensure that they're going to be coming out on top. But even still, it's not necessarily the Fire Giant that most of these teams are after as much as it is just trying to secure 1 or 2 picks, because as soon as a team at this point in the game loses a member or 2, that just becomes absolutely devastating trying to deal with your opposition.
What's the hardest role would you just say to play when you're doing a Fire Giant dance? Is it the frontliner that's trying to find the right opportunity to engage, or is it the backliner trying to position themselves correctly for the engagement to start?
Probably the backliner, just because everybody's looking for you, and it's like you have a giant bullseye on your back, and Ataraxia is probably well aware of the fact that Valance are just going to be looking to try and secure him every single time, because if Ataraxia dies, Obey have to rely too heavily onto Zeus damage, and Valance just have a ton of frontline to where they could just potentially deal with it, just completely keep pressing W at him until he ends up falling himself. And with an Amir on the side of Valance, that is a lot of lockdown potential for a Zeus. So it's really the carries who have to be the most concerned when it comes to these jungle awkward fights, because at one step could be the entire determining factor of the game.
Well, they were trying to get rid of Medjai's Blessing on Captain Twig there. Obey got the Portal Demon for free. Now they're looking towards Big Man Ting. Zalia around the corner gets stopped from the up-down combo that he was looking for. Twig eats a lot of poke there for the time being. Rage and Steel only hits onto the frontline tank. That is Maniac right now as a Millsy dives into. Twig's waiting for some beads, looking for a knock-up. Will only find one target, which was Zalia, who will double dash away. Ataraxia picks up 1 kill in this engagement so far on Big Man Tings. Next on the list is Cherio. The rest of his team abandoned him all on half health, forced back to base, meant that he will fall down too.
The ROM damage along with the Fafnir buff, it's just so much damage being output by Ataraxia, and his positioning there this time around was actually flawless, just making sure to stay behind the front line provided on his team, and this Fire Giant's looking all Obeys.
It is Obeys indeed. Now they can go straight to the right-hand side here, get this tier 2 tower, be able to backdoor it as well. I mean, with the fact that you've got Coerce and an easy tanky front line that can juggle aggro quite easily, they will get this one. This looked like a different story in the first 10 minutes though, Taco. I mean, Valance were the one in control of this game.
But this is the late game composition coming out from the side of Obey. Theirs is a little bit more late game oriented. When you have the Terra and you have the ROM on top of the Fafnir and the Zeus, these are characters that are more... Well, Zeus, not so much. He's the early to mid game presence, but Rom, Fafnir, and Terra are really going to be the core of this composition at this stage of the game, because the later that it goes, the more in favor that it is for Ataraxia to really prosper and shine at this stage of the game.
Well, we do see a Frenzied Ritual picked up here as well now for Emilzy. This next engagement we see, obviously the Fire Giant is already on the side of Obey. They should get the Gold Fury uncontested here, but the next team fight is going to be very difficult for Valance if they don't recognize that Frenzy Ritual is going to be a part of it too. 25% extra damage for everybody on the side of Obey.
But Frenzy doesn't last forever, and as soon as that Ritual is popped, you can expect Valance to just try and back up as far as possible, because the last thing that any of these teams want to do is try and fight into a team that's completely buff with Frenzy.
Definitely. Tier 2 tower on the left-hand side, the last tower that Valance has left standing here. Do you expect them to try and defend this tier 2 or just hold at the Phoenixes?
They might look for some mild poke potential onto Obey, but considering that they know that a Terra is present and they can just heal that up, the smart play for Valance, and yeah, they're backing up already. They just want to wait for the hard engagement onto the Phoenix, because that'll be their best fighting point underneath that Phoenix. So it's a lot of open space, a lot harder for Zeus to try and lock anybody down with his ultimate, and it just overall a better fighting experience for Valance.
Once again, a bit of a split coming out from Captain Twig on the Ratatoska, trying to keep mid lane busy and draw some attention there too. Emilzy in the left-hand side game, plenty of attention from Valance there for a moment, but as tanky as he is with that Fire Giant and the sustain from Maniac on that Terror, he'll be fine for the time being to continue this as Funball is forced to hold mid lane.
Funballer being split away from the rest of his team could also be the downfall for Valance here if he's not careful. And the hard engage potentially coming through.
Oh, there's the Frenzy coming out as well. And Cherio's in a bit of trouble here. Forced to try and walk away back to safety. The shell comes into play a little bit. But the focus really here should be onto the Phoenix, and it is. Twig went to the backside. Big Man Ting still on the front side doing good work. But the burst damage from Ataraxia is too much. He's managed to get the Coerce buff through as well. And he will pick up the kill on Tings. Xaylia forced to leap away as Twig was still keeping them busy, being an annoyance during that team fight as well. The Phoenix goes down, and Obey now 5v4 turn to the middle one.
And almost all of the ultimates expended on the side of Valance other than Cherio, but Cherio might not even get the chance to use it.
No, Ataraxia will pick up the kill with a snipe. He's looking for an extra damage, then he will find it, and then they will turn their attention to the Phoenix again. Funball is about to fall down as well to Maniac, and this could be game here, Taco.
This is not the positioning that Valance wants to be in right now. You got 5 members strong on the side of Obey.
It's not the positioning they want to be in right now.
I mean, just that Titan was gone. That was 100 to 0.